Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after Game 81 of the season between the Winnipeg Jets and the Calgary Flames. And before we get started here, I should just explain where I am. I think we ended the last podcast by saying that I was going to be in Montreal to cover the Guy Lafleur funeral. That was the plan, was going to be going there. Woke up this morning, wasn't feeling well, and didn't really want to go to a funeral and turn it into a super spreader of any kind. So decided to stay home, and also decided to leave the wife and kids, not entirely, but went out to my mom's place. My mom is away, so I'm out in Lactobwani, quarantining in my mom's house in the guest room. You may notice the plants being grown here. My mom's a bit of a botanist. No, they're not pot plants. Get your minds out of the gutter. She's a classy lady who just likes to garden, very much so. But anyways, it's kind of funny because, at some point in the day, I didn't want to pass it to the kids or anything like that. So packed up, grabbed some food out of the fridge, grabbed some stuff to keep me entertained, a couple puzzles, because who doesn't love puzzling? You know what I'm saying? And came out here to make sure that no one at home got sick. And then what does Mrs. Renny do for the first time in her life? She uses my toothbrush tonight, mixes up our toothbrushes and uses my toothbrush. So yeah, great job quarantining by me here, getting out of there, just so Mrs. Renny can purposely infect herself. But whatever, we'll figure it out as we go. But the show must go on. Game 81, we got to close this season out. So we're going to do that, and we're going to bring Scott Billick in later in the show to close that out in the process. So let's get going, and let's get talking about this game. Big win for the Winnipeg Jets. None of them are big wins anymore. This is, we're playing out the stretch here, playing out the string. But the Jets have talked about wanting to get a bit of a positive vibe in the room before they go out. 3 straight wins, that is probably about as good as you can get. They had said they wanted to come home and show their fans that they're better than they were. They look like they're in the process of doing that. All in all, though, I'll say the same thing that I said in the previous couple of games. I don't put a lot of stock in these games. I take a look at this game tonight, and I think this was the Winnipeg Jets outlasting the Calgary Flames given F meter. I mean, the Flames looked like they were going to come out, try and blow the game out in the first period, put up, I believe it was 19 shots or something like that. Looked like they were going to come in and try and overpower the Jets and run away with the game. That all kind of disappeared when Blake Wheeler scored with under 10 seconds left in the first period on just an absolutely gorgeous feed by Nikolai Ehlers. And then it seemed after that, the Flames were like, you know what? If you want it, take it. There was no skin in the game for the Flames here. I'll be honest. I'd like to get into a debate with Ken here down the stretch. This is one of those games I was surprised to see the likes of Gaudreau and Tkachuk and a lot of those players play. I didn't see what the point was. The performance that team put in the second and third period, questions for me what the point was. There didn't seem to be a lot of caring on that side of things. I mean, I guess they kept the game close, and so maybe there's some value in that. But hey, if you're the Jets, I'll say this. One of the things I thought that wound up being a game the likes of which the Jets like playing, right? Like I've talked in the past about the snake charmer goals that the Jets like to score. Well, the Nikolai Ehlers one is the perfect example. Puck's going this way. Suddenly Ehlers is going this way. Suddenly he's flopping the puck back the other way, and it's a one-timer by Blake Wheeler, who's way off to the side into the back of the net. The Jets, we know, love scoring those goals. But what I do like, and what I think has missed quite often from this team so far in this season, is that when the Jets get playing that kind of game, it seems to be the only game they can play. Whereas the game-winning goal by Mason Appleton is that typical goal that you want to see your team scoring, gutting it out, getting to the front of the net. And Josh Morrissey's one-timer goes to the front of the net. I believe it's Adam Lowry in front of the net, creating chaos. That allows the goaltender not only to kick out a big fat rebound, but kind of lose where it's gone. And then Mason Appleton puts it in the back of the net. So I love that aspect and think that, if the Winnipeg Jets next season can start adding a little bit of that, because the one thing I'll say about the snake charmer thing is the Jets do it, I believe, as good as or better than anyone in the league. And it's effective, especially when you're not playing engaged teams. And let's be honest, through 82 games of hockey, you're either playing some bad teams or some non-engaged teams. And the Jets can win games playing that style of hockey. We've seen it before. My problem with it has always been they get playing that style of hockey and then they don't want to play hard other than that. What I saw tonight was a team that had the recognition that, while they had lots of opportunities, they added that other element, that go to the front of the net element, that hard hockey element. And it's why they won this game tonight against, I'll say it one last time, a non-motivated opponent, but they won the game, sent the fans home happy. Not sure you can ask for anything else at this time of year. Let's see what Ken has to say about the whole thing. Bringing the man with the best music in the business. Here comes our guy, Ken Wiebe, everybody. Ken, my friend, great to see you. As we know that people down in Las Vegas, we're seeing you all over the hockey world. Hustler tweeted a picture of you on the Calgary Flames broadcast, which is the Sportsnet broadcast, the other side of the home broadcast on this evening. How was your night, and what did you make of the game?
Well, Sean, we certainly miss you here, and much like the Jets, not just playing out the string, we appreciate the pride you take in being here when you're not 100%, playing hurt, fighting through it. We appreciate your efforts and hope you're feeling better soon. In terms of the game itself, I think you touched on a lot of the obvious items. On the way to the buffet, I may have grabbed a couple of breadsticks on the way by. It was one of those things where, it's an empty calorie game, as our friend Jeff Merrick likes to say. And for the Flames, they came out strong, 11-2 edge and shots on goal. They were taking it to the Jets. First goal, turnover, I guess, blocked shot of the blue line. Tkachuk gets the breakaway. Actually, Hellebuyck makes the initial save, and then it kind of trickles down and kind of rolls in off of him. So, again, good job by the goal scorer. But Hellebuyck actually played it pretty well, and then it kind of rolled in. And then actually, it was vintage Connor Hellebuyck from there, Sean, right? It was he didn't like the first goal on a breakaway, then he slammed the door shut. Tons of great saves from Hellebuyck, and as you mentioned, it was a much less intense game for the Calgary Flames as the one that they played in Nashville the other night, and even probably last night in Minnesota against two playoff teams. So that was right up the Jets' alley in terms of being able to freewheel a little bit more. It wasn't as tight checking as we've been used to seeing from the commitment level shown by the Calgary Flames. Having said that, the Jets still managed to put up 43 shots on goal against Dan Vladar, who was very good in the game. 40 saves for Vladar, the backup. In terms of the Jets, Kyle Connor buzzing around again, trying to inch towards 50. He probably could have had another one or two tonight. But again, a little bit of bad puck luck around the net. But again, he was involved very thoroughly. And as you mentioned, that great zone entry by the Jets. Nice job by Stastny, gets it to Ehlers. Ehlers with the drop. And then just a beautiful pass by Nikolai Ehlers for the Blake Wheeler one-timer. Up to now 16 goals. It will not be his 9th 20-goal season. But when you consider the time that Blake missed, the fact that he's even close to 20 goals is a pretty impressive feat in itself.
Better year than I thought he could have. I've said it numerous times. Go on, Ken.
Yeah, there you go. And, again, for a guy like Mason Appleton, Sean, he's been very involved, and that line hadn't really produced a ton of offense. And it's sort of apropos to what's been happening late for the Jets. Both Lowry and Appleton said they want to produce more, and since that time, both have produced. So, again, Appleton kind of laughed when I asked him about it. He goes, well, it was an empty net. So, those are the ones that you have to bury. But when you're not when it's not going smoothly offensively, those sometimes end up in the pillows or go wide. So, those it still counts no matter how it was scored. Appleton up to 8 goals. I mean, he'd be disappointed to not be in double digits this year, but Mason sounded like a pretty motivated guy to get back to being a double-digit goal scorer starting next season. So overall, the Jets were steady. I mean, they still gave up a few inner slot chances and probably a few too many grade A's, but overall, their offense was rolling and their commitment level was fairly decent, I would say. Fairly high.
No doubt. Let's do this right off the bat. I've given my take. You've given your take. Let's get Scotty Billick in here because he was prompt and got in here right off the bat. Scotty, good to see you, my friend. Take it away. Usually Kenny leaves nothing but scraps at the buffet, but I think there's a lot still sitting on the table there. It's time to feast, my man. Hop in here.
On game 81 of the season with no playoffs. No, I thought it was a good game. We've spent the better part of the last 2-3 weeks kind of, for the lack of a better term, crapping on this team for the season it's had. I think it's been a bit admirable that this team has come out and kind of played it the way that they said that they would play. And it's late and people will say, well, where was this earlier in the season? But and to be fair, they're not playing teams that are playing at the level that they would be playing in game 50 either, and they also played Philadelphia, which is just a fire of a team right now. But I thought they played well. I mean, Eric Comrie's had a couple good starts. Connor Hellebuyck had a good start, and nobody after these games has said anything like, "Oh, hey, look at us! I mean, we're going into next season. We're going to be great and all that." Connor Hellebuyck after this game basically said, "It's nice to win, but." This is not. It's not like this is a Band-Aid or anything, right? It still sucks that they're in the position that they're in, and so there is still that honesty in this team that we've seen over the last 2 weeks, even though they are coming in and playing a little bit better, where you would want them to. But I've enjoyed a bit of the hockey that they're playing because it seems like whatever happened after that game in their last game in Carolina, something. I don't know. We waited a long time after that game for the Zoom calls to come, and that could mean many different things. But if they had some sort of closed door meeting or just whatever, talked it out, whatever that happened after that game, it seems like it's galvanized this team a little bit to at least save some of their pride, save some face at the end of this year. So yeah, I mean it's been difficult, obviously, for this team, but. I think Hellebuyck said it right. I mean, this is what you want to do in a season that's as disappointing as this one, is at least end on a good note, right? And so, this team has said everything that it's when it comes to, how disappointed, how, all the different, elements of why this season turned out to be this way. But at least at this point of the year, they're, trying to show, as Nikolai either said earlier, not necessarily apologize to the fans, but show them that they can be better than this, better than their season was. And so, they've done that for the most part. I mean, does it mean much right now? Is there any tangible benefit to that come the fall? Probably not. But you at least want to see this team care a little bit down the stretch, because it seemed like a lot of this year, at times, they didn't care enough. And so you kind of want to see something at the end of the year. Even if you're a fan, if you paid for a ticket tonight to come here, to Canada Life Center, you wanted your money's worth. And I think since the Colorado game or the Philly game or tonight's game, at least you've gotten your money's worth, a team that's actually tried to play and win hockey games. And that's kind of what I've taken out of this last little bit, because there's nothing else. They're not playing for anything else except the fans and their own pride. And I think they've done a pretty good job at that.
I mean, it's most definitely better than the alternative, which is them continuing to slide and lose games going into the off season. I don't put any stock into it. I think it's far too late to put any stock into it. I mean, this is, again, I'll say this, Colorado. I mean, Colorado did have something to play for when they played the Jets. They were still in the running for the President's Trophy, which I believe the Jets kind of put the nail in the coffin on that. You're right. The Philadelphia Flyers were a tire fire. This Calgary Flames team, listen, people are saying, someone was earlier in the chat was suggesting, Daryl Sutter's teams don't take nights off. That's ridiculous. If you watch this team play a couple nights against the Nashville Predators, you know what this team is capable of. And tonight they were nowhere near showing it. There was a couple times I saw guys, tripped or fall down or something like that and do the slow one knee down on the ice, lean your stick on your hip and slowly push yourself up and get back into the play. That doesn't happen in the playoffs. I mean, guys are getting up and booking it as fast as they can. There was nothing to gain in this, and I think that someone in the chat room, I should bring this up. I think someone asked this question. Bad Mood Blake saying the Flames lost home ice advantage to the Wild. Should they play them in the conference final with the loss tonight? That's not true. They're the second seed. Calgary Flames are the second seed because of the way that they break up the divisions. So they don't.
No, does Minnesota move over?
It doesn't. No one readjusts. It's the Pacific plays the Pacific, and that's what we're determining right now. So based on what happens right now between Dallas won, but if Nashville wins, Nashville jumps into that 7th seed, and Nashville crosses over to the Pacific, and then Nashville's path to the conference final would have to go through the Calgary Flames and then the winner of the Edmonton Oilers and the LA Kings. So you could see an all Central final. That's how that happens. But there's not the 1 and 2 seeds get locked in. That's my understanding of the way it goes. So there's no home ice advantage that was lost here tonight. You will see the Minnesota Wild were playing, because there was still a question of who is going to be the home team in that series between them and the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis, I don't know if they looked at the clock and saw what was happening, decided to nail it in that game. There was nothing to play for here tonight. Before we do go
for Dale Sutter's 700th win, though, you still suck at 699. So, but you're right, there wasn't. But here's the thing,
personal accolades are not going to be on any of those guys' radars.
But if there was nothing to play for,
I want to get into talking about it later, because the Jets are in a position where personal accolades can mean something, right? And we'll talk about that and see what they're able to do in their last couple of games. It's actually a position that, if you're the Jets and you're one to push for that kind of stuff, it's a good spot to be in. The Calgary Flames, I mean, Johnny Gaudreau wasn't out there trying to push for points to try and add to his best ever totals. It didn't look like anything like that. This just, to me, was a Calgary Flames team that knows the games that matter are ahead, and those games weren't here tonight. Before we do go forward, I just want to give a shout out to our sponsors and start off with the gentlemen and the good people at the Johnston Group. You won't find 2 businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan Employee Benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues, and telemedicine services are included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chambersplan.ca. Guys, let's launch into you know what? Let's get right to it. Let's get right to Sarah Orlesky's interview with Mark Chipman, because there's a couple comments here that I starred to bring up later. Paul Adet says Chipman was just like Chevy. No answers, but it sure sounds like they are ready to stay with the same players and management. David Martino says from the interview with Chipman, it seems that Chevy is staying. Your thoughts? My thoughts, David Martino and Paul Adet, and I'm going to sum this up real quickly. I think you're entirely right. To me, that was an absolute ironclad sign that Mark Chipman is not sitting back reviewing the job of Kevin Cheveldayoff. That to me sounded like a guy he's ready to go tuck away into the room with and go, see what they're going to do about this going forward. But anyone who thought, and we can get into the debate about this, I'll have something to say about it when you guys are done. But let's start with you, Ken. What did you take away from that? Because what I took away from that is anyone who is expecting sweeping changes may not be getting full-on sweeping changes. Maybe, there will be some broom strokes, but anyone who thought there was going to be a house cleaning of epic proportions, I don't think it's going to make it up to the general manager's chair.
No, that's fair. I mean, we've been talking about this. I think that the review on the general manager has been done. I think that the Jets and Mark Chipman and company are happy with the job Kevin Cheveldayoff has done in terms of getting to this point. But I don't agree with the fact that there won't be any changes. Again, one of the things is when you get into a discussion like this, you're not throwing up the for sale sign for fear of reducing the value of the pieces that you may be trying to move. So for me, will it be sweeping? Then will it include the coach and the general manager? No, that's right, Sean. I agree with that, but I still think there is an opportunity for significant change to the construction of this roster. But you may not have heard when you were off. I still think that they're going to make some significant moves. I think there's going to be changes coming on defense. I still think that there was an opportunity that a foundational piece could be moved. Will there be multiple pieces moved? Well, maybe not, but I do think that, again, it's complicated by the fact that the Jets would need to get Pierre-Luc Dubois signed, but as I've been saying for weeks now, I think that Mark Scheifele's exit meeting is absolutely essential, and I do believe that, if Kevin Cheveldayoff hears that Mark Scheifele wants to be part of the solution and that he's committed to getting the Jets back to where they want to be, then he can stick around, and maybe he's moved to the wing. Maybe he's got, this is the longest offseason Mark Scheifele's going to have in his career as well. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I still think that Mark Scheifele is in play. I'm not saying it's a lock that he's moved, but I do think that the general manager will be looking to improve the roster. Yes, I know that the Jets believe in this roster. I know that we've heard the players speak about it, but I do expect changes both on the back end and a significant forward to be on the move still. Now, again, you have to get the right deal. You're not going to give a player away, but I do think that there are still going to be moves that are made because I don't think the Jets feel that the status quo is going to get them where they want to be. The status quo might get them back to the playoffs, but the Jets have higher aspirations than that. So I do think there's still going to be significant change. In terms of Dave Lowry's future, I mean, it's still up for debate. I think the Jets roster, I think Dave did a better job than his record is going to show. But does that mean he keeps the job? It'll depend on the pool of people that are available, and it'll depend on what Dave's vision for the future is as well.
Scotty, take a run at this.
Yeah, I was just I had to unmute myself because of the lawnmower back here. I thought Mark Chipman said what needed to be said. I mean, I think he kind of, pandering is not the right word. I think he agreed with the fans and the sentiment right now of even his players, saying it's disappointing that they underachieved, all that. He said all of those things in it. He says there's regret. He says it's hard to process. And 4 straight years, he felt this year was very achievable, was the quote. Playoffs were very achievable. That's one of the things that he said in the interview, and felt that they underachieved this year. And he also took the responsibility. I mean, he said the things that you're going to say. This was, for the lack of this was an interview done on the regional broadcast of the rights holder. It's not going to be hard hitting in the sense if we in the media here had Mark Chipman in the same way. But at the same time, and he said he felt the weight of responsibility, and so he should. He's the owner of the team. And he said he's got to find a way to write it. The part that probably, and the thing that got on social media, because I tweeted out a couple of things that he told Sarah, obviously fans are upset at the same things that Sean said at the outset of this, was that there aren't going to be a lot of significant changes. I think the word that Mark used was dramatic. They're not going to make any dramatic changes, at least at the moment. I don't know what dramatic means to him, but given Kevin Cheveldayoff, I think we already knew that Kevin Cheveldayoff's job was relatively safe, dating back to the Kyle Beach situation, how staunch his defense was, Mark's defense was of Kevin Cheveldayoff during that whole thing. I think the loyalty here obviously speaks very loudly to Kevin Cheveldayoff. This team is trying to do something different than other teams do. Instead of firing coaches and GMs or whatever, trying to win with continuity and that sort of thing. Is it the right approach? 3 playoff series wins in 11 years would suggest it's not. But this team is trying a certain way. Where I agree with Kenny. There has to be moves on this team, and I think there will be, because regardless of if you think this team can win or not, it's just a thought. And what we saw this season was a team that Mark Chipman said thought playoffs were very achievable, finished well out of the playoff picture with like 6 games to go or whenever they were done. That's a long way off the playoff mark. And they've played teams, especially during that road trip, that, you know, if the Jets even squeaked in the back door of the play, they were going to get trashed out of the playoffs, just the way those teams played. But that whole road trip, that final road trip, showed that this team is so far off the mark right now. I thought it was interesting that Mark Chipman said that they're going to follow Kevin Cheveldayoff's lead and see where that takes. To me, that was almost open-ended at the end, right? That leaves like, well, it depends where it takes. Like, I think the seat is still pretty, well, it's warm for Kevin Cheveldayoff, right? Like, I mean, I don't think he can withstand another season like this one. So I think the leash has gotten shorter with Kevin Cheveldayoff, but it's also clear that he's going to have the reins to do what needs to be done this summer in his eyes to do it. But, you know, as it comes to Dave Lowry, I mean, I understand that maybe his record may not show, but this is a team that's had the same coaches. I mean, Dave Lowry not maybe included, but a lot of the same coaches since, you know, they started here. It's probably time to move on from a couple of the guys behind the bench. You know, for me, the only guy that's really safe here is Wade Flaherty, and that's because he has a very, very good rapport with your starting netminder, your franchise goalie, and your backups, and all the backups that have come through here. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think Dave Lowry's job is safe by any means. I think if anything, if they're going to do a coaching search or that, he'll be in the mix there. But there's going to be a lot of options this offseason for coaches. It just depends on what the direction is and where they want to take it, and what Kevin Cheveldayoff apparently will have to hear and see, you know, what the vision is. But again, you know, this goes back to my point, and I've been ragging on this for a while. What is the vision of this club? And when Kevin Cheveldayoff talks on Monday, I mean, that's going to be one of the questions that will be asked to him, because right now they don't have, you know, Mark Scheifele earlier this season wasn't even able to identify what this team's identity was. Kevin Cheveldayoff needs to come out and say what the vision for this team is, because right now it's just as blurry as Sean's. Anyways, I'm down at the buffet here. I'll mute myself.
Ken, sorry, just before you go, oh, sorry. I was going to let you go to the buffet. I just think the Jets are not going to make a hasty decision when it comes to the coaching position. So some people may say that's unfair to Dave Lowry, but I would say that they're going to be very thorough in terms of the search. I think they're going to wait at least a round to see who else may be available after the first round is over. We know there's always upsets. We know there are going to be 100-point teams out of the playoffs. And then they'll kind of go from there. I just don't expect a hasty decision when it comes to that. But yes, as far as our good friends and fellow members of the Cambrian Credit Union, we've talked about our free banking with Unfee. We've talked about the low mortgage rates, and tonight we're going to talk about the Cambrian Credit Union credit card. Cambrian has a great MasterCard options, including no fee cards, low interest rate cards, and rewards cards. Up until June 30th, you can get a Cambrian Credit Union World MasterCard and receive a $120 first-year annual fee rebate, as well as 15,000 bonus points, which means $150 in cash equivalent. That's a total of $270 in cash equivalent. Conditions apply. Learn more at cambrian.mb.ca.
Okay. I want to retort to what we were talking about before this. One of the things that Mark Chipman had said about this was that, you know, they were going to, like Ken said, they were going to follow Kevin Cheveldayoff's approach and not be reactionary. That to me is the philosophy that you can expect from this organization going forward. That's their way of saying, we believe in this team. We think what happened here was a one-off, and we still think that there's, I bet you could get in there and you could hear them talking about the Calgary Flames and how the Calgary Flames turned this around. I was on Fan 590 in Toronto the other day talking with Nick Kiprios, and they'd asked me about that, and I'd said, you know what? The one thing I hate about the whole, well, Calgary was bad last year and they were great this year argument is, you know who was bad last year? A lot of other teams that didn't turn it around. And it reminds me of everything that everyone said when the Jets were pushing for the playoffs, when they talked about, well, the St. Louis Blues did it in 2009 they were last in the league, and they came all the way back and won the Stanley Cup. So like a once-in-a-lifetime team pulls it off, and that's what you're going to hang your hat on? That 2019 Blues came back and had a miracle run and made the playoffs. So that's what we should try to do too. To me, that was ridiculous. The numbers said that wasn't happening. Now, everyone can push and go for a miracle, and the Jets did. They tried. It didn't work out. No one should have expected it to work out. People should have been extremely surprised if it did work out, but no one should have expected it. Just like in my mind, no one should expect the Winnipeg Jets to turn around, do very little, and take the same core back and do what the Calgary Flames are doing this year. I don't think people should expect that. And I go back to this idea that the Jets aren't going to be reactionary. And I get that. I understand that. You don't want to panic. You don't want someone who's sitting there pressing the panic button every time something goes wrong. But the Winnipeg Jets haven't gone anywhere near the panic button. Give them credit for that. But there's being not reactionary, but there's also not taking action. And my argument would be that in promoting an assistant coach to coach after Paul Maurice left is essentially not taking action. The Jets didn't bring attention and go out and find someone and say, we need to see a different philosophy with this team. They took the next guy in line and put him up in front. And the Jets didn't take action to trade deadline and say, we need to do this. The numbers say we're not going to make the playoffs. We need to go and load ourselves up as much as they could. They did the opposite. They moved the one guy they knew they had to, and then didn't even take calls on a guy like Paul Stastny to see what they could come back with. This is inaction is what we're seeing from this. And the one thing about this that I see is when I hear this right off the bat, if I go back to saying this, the last 3 years for the Winnipeg Jets are this team that is Stanley Cup ready. They just need to plug the hole on defense. That's the theory. Dustin Byfuglien screwed this team over, and as soon as they fix that, they're going to go on and win the cup. And we saw this did not work. That was not what happened. The philosophy that has been sold for 3 years here in Winnipeg was wrong. That was not what was happening. And then if you take a look at that and you take a look at the approach, the promoting Dave Lowry did not get the response that you wanted. The Jets didn't make the playoffs. I'm not saying Dave Lowry did a bad job. I'm not saying he can't do a good job, but is definitive that he did not get the job done that the Jets wanted him to get done. He didn't get this team to the playoffs. And there's a debate to be had here about like what we have right now in Sanford and Appleton and Barron. But you look back on that trade deadline, depending on what you get back for Andrew Kopp, the trade deadline was supposed to create a third line that changed things, changed the complexion of this team and had them go on the run. That did not happen either. So the lack of action has not been working for this team. So being reactionary, I don't advise it. People shouldn't be doing it. But taking action at some point has to come into play here. And I will say this. What I would have liked to have heard from Mark Chipman and from Kevin Cheveldayoff when we talked to him is that they have a very good idea of what went wrong this season, that they can put their finger right on it. I don't need them to tell us. They're not going to tell us. We know this organization won't do this, but I want to hear from them that they know what went wrong and they know how to address it and they know how to go about it. I want to hear that confidence. And I'm just not hearing that. I'm hearing let's not panic, which to me tells me, let's just kind of take stock of what we have here. Maybe this team deserves another run, because I thought at the very least, guys, there should have been a message from Mark Chipman through the fans that Kevin Cheveldayoff's job was under review too. You don't need to can the guy, but based on where this team has been over the last number of years and where they ended up this year, doesn't it make sense that the guy, the architect of this team's job would at least be under review? And that doesn't look like it's happening. Maybe that review has happened already. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Mark Chipman has done his due diligence. He's gone through this and it's over. But as fans, I can tell you out there right now, a lot of people are going to say, Renny, you're crazy. Shut up. We need Kevin Cheveldayoff. But there's going to be a lot of fans out there who are going to say, you need to take a look at this. And what I think the fans would have liked to have heard is we're turning over every rock out here to figure out what happened. We are not taking anything for granted. We are looking in every single direction. This sounded to me like the Jets are very calmly going to take the same approach they've taken every year since 2015 or maybe since 2011, and we've seen that result hasn't paid off. There may need to be a different way of doing business here, and I didn't hear any inkling that there's going to be a different way of doing business this offseason with the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I mean, I would just quickly say that, I mean, it's really not Mark's style to make a lot of bold proclamations, Sean. I would say that he has probably, I mean, not probably, it's clear that if he's decided to keep Kevin Cheveldayoff, that he has reviewed the work. And again, I said this right off the top. I mean, if the Jets are planning to trade someone, they're not going to openly say who they're trading or where the problems were. I mean, it's going to diminish your trading power. So I can understand people feeling frustration. There's no doubt about that. And again, much like the players themselves have made it quite clear that the status quo is unacceptable. They don't want to suffer the same fate. So again, Mark Chipman's more about actions than words. He doesn't speak often, and when he speaks, he doesn't really, like I said, make a lot of bold proclamations. But what we do know is that he puts faith in the people that he hires to make decisions that he feels will be in the best interest of the hockey club. Now, for us, we all think the best interest of the Winnipeg Jets hockey club is to upgrade the roster, right? I mean, that seems like something that needs to happen.
I'm trying to unmute myself and not mute myself and whatever. Here's the problem. Two things. One issue with that is saying, if you don't speak often, then when you do speak, your words should be weighted or viewed as whatever. I agree with Sean. I think, and I get it. This team is probably worried about selling tickets and all that sort of thing. You don't want to say the wrong thing because you still want to sell tickets. You're obviously having to do different methods of selling tickets. You see the commercials that you never used to see, all that stuff, right? But at the same time, I think you can sell more tickets by just being honest with the fans. And I think the problem is he wasn't honest enough, and I agree with Sean that he wasn't honest enough with the fans. Like, not even honest, but just direct, right? Like, say that you're looking into that, or say that you, like Sean said, you're not going to leave any stone unturned here. He sort of said that, but it was in a way that wasn't, I don't know. It didn't feel like there was any weight behind what he was saying. And then he went on to say that, well, we're going to follow Kevin's lead. Whereas, and don't get me wrong, like Kevin Cheveldayoff has done some good for this team and over the years. But at the end of the day, like, what is this business about? All it is about hanging banners. And they're not doing that. Like, they're nowhere close to that. Then they've only gone downhill since the middle of the 2018-19 season. And so, maybe Kevin Cheveldayoff comes out and says it. Maybe he does something different than what he normally does. But the fan base, the people that pay their money to come here need something to hang their wallet on, whatever you want to come to, because if you're going to sell tickets, it needs to be something that's tangible, something that you can put your hope in. And if I'm a fan right now, what is that? What do you hope next season is going to change? Like Sean said, after Mark's thing, what's going to change? Like, and maybe that's my question back to you, Kenny, is like, if you listen to it, obviously, I mean, what do you think changes next year? Because Mark Chipman didn't talk about anything to do with coaching changes, GM changes, player personnel changes, nothing. And I get that, that they don't want to diminish the value of whoever they're going to trade. But there was nothing really tangible there. He said a lot, but didn't say much at all, right? I mean, I think that's part of the problem. And so if you're a fan, and I saw the social media reaction to when some of the things that I tweeted about what Chipman said, it wasn't good. And I get it. Social media is not the greatest barometer for whatever it is, but there is some stock to be placed in what people are saying somewhere. And if it's one person's thought or 10 people's thought, it's probably 20 people's thought and 100 people's thought, or around the same thing. And people are upset. People are upset about another year where this team didn't take a step forward, right? And so I think it was incumbent on Mark to be a little more direct about what's happening. And I'm just not sure we've gotten that. I agree with Sean. And again, for you, Kenny, what did Mark say today that inspired any sort of hope of something better next season?
Well, what he said, they weren't going to panic. So for an organization that prides itself on being methodical, he told you that they're not going to hire a coach on Monday. They're not going to make trades until the right trade comes to them. I think he didn't say there wouldn't be moves. He said they would not be reactionary in terms of making a bunch of rash decisions.
But that's not saying anything, is it, Kenny? Like that's not saying anything. I'm not going to hire a coach on Monday. Like no one would expect that. So I get what they're trying to say.
I'm not. I mean, if they knew who they wanted to hire, they could hire.
They're not really saying anything. They're not saying anything. They're not saying, we plan to do this, we plan to do that, and I don't expect them to. But them coming out and saying we're going to be methodical and all this kind of stuff is just people saying, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to open my computer and I'm going to punch numbers into it. They're not saying anything. And I think Scott's got a good point there in that, we've seen this, there's not as many people in the seats and stuff like that. Like there's a communication level that you would think is going to happen between the team. And I know what you're saying, Ken, and I think you're right. And I think this is what the Jets are thinking. They're like, people will know when they need to know, and we are going to speak with our actions. And we do plan to take actions, not drastic actions, but we're going to let our actions do the speaking. I don't know. I think that there's something to be said about reaching out to the fans in that moment to say this wasn't acceptable. And, again, back to the whole no stone will be unturned to figure this out. We are figuring this out. We have an idea what's happening. This will be fixed. Any of those kind of things. It definitely was not that. It was we're disappointed, but we're not going to panic. And I don't know that I gleaned any other message than that.
Yeah, just one other quick thing. I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from, but if you're trying to make a trade that benefits the hockey club, well, the Jets are usually the ones that are trying to take advantage of teams that aren't making long, methodical, the irrational decisions that come after you get bounced after the first round when you're the Scott, 1 second. If I had told,
great point. I was
no. You're helping to me. Scott doesn't agree. This is very simple, you guys. If who knows what happens in the next 3 months, but if I had told you that all of Mark Scheifele, Jack Roslovic, and Patrick Laine would be traded within a 2-year period, would you not consider that foundational change for a team that is a draft and develop team? That's 3 first-round draft picks for a team that also moved Jacob Trouba.
Again, forced. They had no choice. They had to move all of those guys.
Okay.
We're never going to get anything for them. Kenny, I get what you're saying. And I'm not saying that you're just walking the fence or whatever.
I'm not. I'm just saying future behavior is the best predictor past behavior for future behavior.
Exactly.
So what do you want them to do? I mean, Scott, who are they going to so who are they going to trade for? You're not going to make again, if the Toronto Maple Leafs lose, maybe they go out and get William Nylander. I mean, today you're not going to know today. Wait to me. You're not knowing today who is available to be traded. What team is looking for their own transformational change?
Whatever trade they make, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's about what is said. We are going to do something to change this. We are going to look at something that needs to be changed, and we're going to make a change in that department. It's the problem is the vagueness of what they're trying to say, or the lack of air behind the words that they're using. That's part of the problem. It doesn't matter who they're trading or whatever. That stuff will get sorted out. But say that you're going to go into this offseason, and like Sean said, don't leave a stone unturned. We are going to right this ship, like Mark said. But how? You have a segment on your regional broadcast. It's the only time you're going to talk to the media. He's not going to talk to us, paper or scribes or anybody else, it seems. So say what you need to say, but make sure that it's punchy, that it has weight, and that people can believe it. And I think that's the problem, because you hear Sean say it, and it's just like, well, we already got one guy. And then I look at my Twitter mentions, and nobody thinks anything's going to change. And so when you have players like Brendan Dillon saying that going into next season with the same thing would be basically the definition of insanity, or Kyle Connors questioning culture and motivation, or whatever it is, all the things that we've heard, and then you have somebody say, well, we're going to be methodical. If Sean's right and this team knows what needs to be changed, then why didn't Mark Chipman come out today and say, hey, we know what we're going to do, or we have a plan, and we're going to start enacting it, and that starts Monday. It doesn't mean that they have to make a trade on Monday or fire a coach on Monday, but at least be definitive about what you're going to do when you're talking in front of your fan base. That's all I'm saying.
This is very simple.
They want me to do this, and less they're doing. There was 13,000 people in here the other night against the Flyers team that has a ton of fans in the city, right? There's nobody in the stand.
Scott, hold on a sec here, because I'm seeing the direction the chat is going here.
Sorry.
Jerry Brown says, "What's the hurry? Why panic in May? There's no big hurry. You don't want to rush important decisions, and this will be important decisions." I don't know how people are missing the point on what is being said here. There is no one who is saying the Jets need to hire a coach tomorrow and make trades tomorrow and solidify their roster tomorrow and lock people down tomorrow. No one has said that. I don't understand why that is being taken. We're talking about the message that is sent to the fan base. And again, nothing here has been said. We want to know who's on their way out and who's on their way in. You want to get an idea and communication from the ownership group of that. They have an idea of what's happening and the things they're going to do. You don't need to tell us what you're going to do, but you have to give an idea that this is unacceptable and there are going to be steps that are taken. So I don't want to get too chippy with the chat here. I don't understand. I haven't heard anything from Scott or myself or Ken that suggests we are screaming to have the Jets address their offseason issues tomorrow. So sorry, moving on from that. Anyways, Ken, you had a point you wanted to make.
No, just this is where Scott and I differ. I don't think you sell tickets with words either. Does the fan base want to be reassured? Sure. But to me, no one is walking to the box office if Mark Chipman says there's going to be sweeping changes. The fans want to see the changes. So it's all about action for me. I'm not saying words are not important because, yes, I can understand why fans would have wanted a little bit more of a reassurance. But
Ken, just to stop that, I can understand why fans are thinking the way Wrench Doozer is here, who says ownership basically said that the process won't change. I can understand that message to me came through louder than we know what's happening. We're taking steps. We're going to fix this. This is I guess this is the main difference, and I'll let you finish this up here. I think this is the main difference. Is I agree 100% with Wrench Doozer that I don't know. I'm not saying that you're wrong, Ken. I'm not saying that they're not doing things. Bomber, look at that. Oh, and Julie. Oh,
Judy, hello.
My personal space.
Star-studded show here. Look at this. I just think that this is it. Like, I think the point that we're trying to make here, and Stonewall Dave really summed it up there as well. But like, in a time where there's not a lot of, where there's seats that are going empty, where people are frustrated online, the message that you give to fans matters. And I would suggest Wrench Doozer is right in saying ownership basically said that the process won't change. And I don't think people are crazy to look at that and think that. Sorry, Ken, move on. Or
don't be sorry. It's all good. But I mean, to me, the Jets need to have an improved roster. They need to change the complexion, and they know that. They have too much of the same. I mean, this is not something that the Jets are ignoring. They're not blind to it. They need to expand their depth. They need to move a couple of defensemen to get their young players into the lineup. I mean, we know this. We know the way that Dylan Sandberg is played, and we know how Ville Heinola is either knocking on the door to be a regular or to be on the move, and I still think he's going to be in the lineup. So we know there's got to be change on defense because they can't play 9 defensemen next year. So we also know that they're probably going to be looking at upgrading up front. I mean, so can they sign? I mean, Philip Forsberg was suggested. I mean, are the Jets going to outbid somebody for Philip Forsberg? I mean, it's possible, but it seems unlikely, right? So the Jets' top priority for the offseason is to get Pierre-Luc Dubois signed to a long-term contract. So we know that Pierre-Luc Dubois spoke this morning. We can dig into that in a second. But so they know moves need to be made. I mean, the Jets are not blind in thinking that it's 2018. I mean, I honestly don't think that they think that. I just think that,
I get what you're saying, Ken. I agree with you in a certain sense. This is a team that has always held its cards close to its vest. But when it's as bad as it's been this year, maybe you show your hand just a little bit more, because I think the words do matter right now. because we know that the action hasn't been taken yet. And so when you want to bridge the gap between what you're going to do in the offseason and what's happening right now, don't those words mean something? Don't those words have more weight? And especially when your owner, who has spoken, 4 or 5 times in 11 years, right, to the media, when he comes out and does what he does, or does what he did today, shouldn't there be a message there to the fans that holds some weight, that carries them into the off-season, whatever it is? Doesn't have to be Monday, it should be Tuesday, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that whatever Mark Chipman said today was always going to be completely dissected, completely whatever, right? Because it happens so rarely. So shouldn't that message be tailored to the people that you need to fill this place, and the hope that they need to open up their wallets and fill it? And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, and I know some people say that's. I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying that it's a trade or a coaching change, but just something's got to change. I'm just not sure. He sort of admitted it because he said that that they need a different. Something needs to change, but it's just I didn't feel like it was forceful enough, or maybe impactful is the right word, but just wasn't an impactful enough message that resonated well with the fan base. And I think all of us could look on our social media feeds and see that. But that doesn't always mean that that's what it is. But I think there's some strength in all those numbers that we saw tonight, maybe on social media, where people are just generally upset at where it's going. And you wanted something. I think Mark Chipman could have calmed the waters a bit more tonight in a different way that was more impactful. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but you know what has been impactful and does show a change to the process? What have we been hearing from the players for the last 2 weeks?
Right.
Well, you know why? Here's my counter to what you've been saying, and I'm not disputing everything. But after you've heard guy after guy roll up to the podium and use words like embarrassing, you're not going to get that from the person at the top of the food chain.
Why not?
That's just not how the True North rolls. I think that your expectations are way off if you think that that's. And to me, you know what is more impactful? What have the players have been saying? The players are sour about how the year has gone. I mean, right, now they have to match that with their actions.
Right, I get that, but the players can only do so much. Don't get me wrong; they have the biggest job to do on the ice, but they can't go into this off season and bring in whoever on coaching or change the coaching staff or make the trades that maybe they think need to be traded. This team still needs a vision and direction from up top, from the people that are paid to do that. And I just don't know if we know what that is. I mean, you tell me, Kenny, what the vision of this team is then.
I mean, you don't know it, and I don't know it necessarily, but that's not to say they don't know it. It's just they don't care to share it. And again, hey, would I like them to be a little bit more open? Of course I would. But I just think that actions are what are going to matter. Sorry?
But I just think teams that are in this situation are more transparent.
Okay, so
there's a lot at stake, and it's not just of the on-ice product. It's what happens off the ice, too.
Yeah, there are tons of... Again, Sean, I know you don't like the example, but so if we look back to Brad Treleving's year-end availabilities, and I listened to a lot of them, I didn't hear Brad Treleving making any bold proclamations. He counted on his best players to be better. And Sean, this is where I disagree with your point. I'm not saying it's a lock that the Jets can rebound the way that the Flames did, but this is very simple. Johnny Gaudreau was at one time a 99-point player. Last year, Johnny Gaudreau was not a high performer. This year, he's back in the hundreds. So when the Jets say, when Dave Lowry steps to the podium and says, look at their best players, he's not saying Mark Scheifele's name by name, but he's saying if the Jets want to do what Calgary did, Mark Scheifele's going to have to play the way Johnny Gaudreau did. That means going from 70 points to 100 points. So that's a big ask and a big commitment. But that is how, Brad Treleving was very methodical. He also didn't go out and say, I'm going to sign a Stanley Cup champion. He just went out and did it, Sean. We talked about this before. Why is it working for Calgary? They got a bunch of high character players and winners that they brought in. The Jets need to bring in guys that have a winning pedigree and that can help with some of the areas where they are deficient.
And a two-time
Kevin Cheveldayoff knows that. So does Mark Chipman. He's just not going to announce it to the masses. Now, again, it's going to take action, but I would think that we're fooling ourselves if you think that because the Jets didn't lay out their plan that they think that the house is burning and everything's fine.
No one's saying that. No one is coming. We just want to be more transparent with the plan that they have.
For sure, but one quick thing. The players have been way more transparent, and that to me is a sign of progress for an organization that has been buttoned down. So, Sean, we talked about this on our hit.
In the dressing room, that's it. And I want to say this, Ken. You are right. You are entirely right that I hate the example that you gave, because Brad Treliving is one of the most open and honest and give you peeks behind the curtains GMs in the entire league. And it is the exact opposite. It may be the most tight-lipped and closed-mouth management group that we have here. So on the one time that Brad Treliving doesn't go and tells you that, and Ken, no one is asking for that. No, why would Brad Treliving not say that I'm going out and I'm going to sign a Stanley Cup winner? Because then if he doesn't do it, he totally slays himself. He screws himself over. So he's not going to do that. No one is saying, Chipman is not coming out here, and no one is asking him to come out and say, we're trading Mark Scheifele and we're hiring a new coach and we're doing this. No one has asked for this. Nobody. No one. Brad Treliving, though, brings you behind the curtain at almost every single opportunity he can, and in Winnipeg they put up the iron curtain almost every opportunity they can. The argument here is not that that Scott or myself or the fans or the people who feel that they want to have an idea of what kind of progress is going to be made are told specifically what is going to happen. No one wants that. No one thinks that. Everyone knows that the Jets would screw themselves by doing that if they said, hey, we're trading Mark Scheifele right now, and then you just drive his value down. No one is asking for that. But the suggestion that there couldn't have been more, we're going to do something. They don't even have to say we're going to take action. They're going to say something will be done to address this. It means nothing, but it takes a position of going forward. And I go back to what was being said before this. People are saying from this that the message they took from this is that not a lot is going to change. And that would be the message that I thought came profound from there. And you've talked about it, Ken, on numerous occasions, how good a thing you think it is that the dressing room are finally starting to take ownership and say all those kind of things. If they can do it, why can't the management group do it? Why can't the ownership group do it? If it's a good thing that the players do it, it should be a good thing that, and here's the last point I'll make. You're saying, Ken, you believe that the players saying that in the dressing room is a sign of progress within the organization. I say we can look at it as a sign of progress in the dressing room. It still is a question to try and figure out whether the organization is getting that message and plans to follow that same blueprint, because I did not hear anything that closely resembled that. It's why I think that Kevin Cheveldayoff's season-ending avail is going to be must-see TV, because I want to see if he talks his way out of answering questions the entire time, or if he's going to give any kind of indication that this was not good enough. We will be doing something to address this. Something will be done. Changes will be made. Or if it's just going to be, response after response that says, yeah, we're not hiring a coach tomorrow. That tells me nothing. We know they're not hiring a coach tomorrow. We know it makes sense for the season to end and find out who's out there. We get that. When you say that, you are not saying anything. And the fact that the Jets players are saying something, I agree with you, is good. It would be nice to get an idea, if you're the fans and you want to sign up for a season ticket, to get an idea that someone is taking something forward with this. Go for it, Ken.
It's okay. I'm happy to have you have the last word there. I think we should get to PLD quickly before we wrap the show. Let's quickly on PLD, because we've been talking about it so much.
Well, we have to talk about Dennis before we go too.
Let's save Pierre-Luc Dubois then for Sunday or whatever.
We can do Pierre-Luc Dubois tomorrow. Let's just get into Dennis, guys. Let's do it this way. We all know, we've all heard Dennis. We know he's about as good as it gets. We don't need to be here telling you that. Ken, favorite Dennis story, followed by Scotty's favorite Dennis story.
Yeah, a lot of things. I mean, Dennis is a mentor, friend, and absolute gem of a human being. He's provided a ton of great advice. The first road trip we were ever on in the National Hockey League with the Winnipeg Jets, there were some interesting circumstances that led to a bad start to the day, and we don't have to get into those. But on about the fifth hole, between shots, he pulled me aside and said, "Glenn Sather told me a long time ago, you're behind off to get to the NHL, and once you're there, you better enjoy it." That turned my round around, and it turned my perspective around. We were in Florida playing at near sunrise. Tons of great stories. Dennis is an incredible human being, as you mentioned. His ability to tell stories is probably unmatched. This is a guy with more than 5 decades of experience in the hockey world, and for folks who don't know and who only know him as a play-by-play guy, this is a guy who is a general manager involved in hockey, has an incredible call, but is as good as he is at his job. He's an even better human being, and I'm very proud to call him a friend. And quite frankly, I'm certainly going to miss him around here, but I'm wishing him and Bev all the best in the semi-retirement. It's not full retirement because he's still going to keep those pipes flowing at international events coming up, including the World Championships that are coming up. That will include Nicolas Ehlers, and even though Pierre-Luc Dubois didn't fully commit, Pierre-Luc Dubois will be suiting up for Team Canada at the World Championship as well.
Yeah, and just for me, I think, a lot of stories, I've sat with dinners with Beyak here, all that stuff. Well, Dennis, I shouldn't call him Beyak. But to me, and we haven't been in the room in a couple years, but here's a guy that, at the time had been just approaching like 50 years in broadcast, right? And he would be there every morning sitting behind the scrums with his notebook open and just taking notes. And here's a guy who knows this team inside and out and all that stuff. He doesn't have to do any of this stuff. But it was the dedication, and he's 70 now. It's the dedication that I've always seen from him in this job that's always stood out to me. Aside from the funny stories and the passion that fuels us all, and all the jokes and his quips and the stuff like that, Dennis has like one of the best, like some of the greatest one-liners, like, and he just says them so very like it's just like in a conversation, he'll just say it and you don't even pick up on it right away, and then everybody starts laughing. But it's the dedication that Dennis had to this job to do it for the people that were listening. And I don't like, you hear about this like Bob Cole or who's the guy in that just NBC that just Doc Emmerich, guys like that. There was something about Dennis's call that always pulled you in, and I don't know if he's ever missed a moment that could have been missed. And all you have to do is go back to, and I wrote a story on Dennis yesterday in the Sun, and I remember his October 19th, 2016 call. It's the first game with Austin Matthews against Patrick Laine. Austin Matthews gets stoned at one end by Michael Hutchinson, and it's turned back up ice by Patrick Laine. And you guys, anybody who's a Jets fan remembers the call. Scores, Patrick Laine. It's the most iconic call, in my opinion, of Dennis's time here with the Jets in his 11 years. And I think that's it. Like, those are the things that you will remember as a fan for years. You will see him in that clip because of how well he called that. And I just always thought Dennis had the right words at the right time. And I believe it's because of how much he put into this job, even as he approached 50 years, doing it after 50 years. It was always about just watching him work. You just watch the work ethic. And I understand that he does broadcasts and I write, but you can still take something from the guy that I'm 35. I'm half of his age. But knowing how hard he still worked at 70, it's inspiring. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is just watching Dennis work. Fans don't always get to see that, but you could always hear it. You could hear it in his call, in what he said, in his interviews with players, all of that stuff. Dennis was always well connected, of course, and he just did a fantastic job. And I wish it's going to be weird without him here. Even though for the last 7 or 8 years, I haven't really heard him call a lot of games because road games, but not a lot of home games. But it's going to be weird, and I believe this city is losing a massive part of its sports let's say, identity landscape or whatever you want to call it. Dennis is a great person, you know, and a legendary, if you want to call it, you know, play-by-play guy, and I'm happy that he's still going to be doing some TSN games, so I can still catch and tune in.
So I get to say this because, you know, I do national broadcasts where the job of the national broadcaster is supposed to be to treat each team as though they're on the same level, right? We have an understanding that we have a Canadian audience, right? There has to be a hat tip to that. But you can't go all in, right? And I've always said this in the past. A lot of times people will come in and we'll be doing a Sportsnet game or a Hockey Night in Canada game on CBC or whatever, and people will get really upset. And the one thing that I learned early in this business is if you're listening to the home broadcast all the time and they're telling you how great this guy is and how great that guy is and how amazing this guy is, they're not telling you about, you know, when they didn't come back on the back check and all those different kind of things. You know, if you're a fan and you want to put on the blue tinted glasses, then you get irritated when the other team is giving as much, or when the announcers are giving much airtime to the opposition team. It bugs you. It drives you nuts, right? So I am not a big fan of that kind of play calling. Sometimes I'll, you know, pick up some States broadcasts and I'll be listening and I'll be like, my God, this is almost unlistenable, right? Because it's like, oh, that was a terrible call if their team got a penalty and so on and so forth. That's always bugged me. I think Dennis, better than anyone else in this business, was a home guy who gave everything that you possibly had to the Jets fan, everything that they would ever want, without lying to them, tweaking it to them. There was an honesty to Dennis's call that was remarkable and tough to do in a world where you've got to keep the teams that you're calling the games for happy. You never ever felt like Dennis was trying to trick you or feel like, hey, wasn't that a great play? When you're like, great play. The guy did that, and then he did 3 other terrible things out there. Dennis was honest and yet supportive of his team, understood the fans. Scott, you're right. I think it's the best call in Winnipeg Jets history is the scores. And that comes from Dennis understanding the Jets fan, the audience, and knowing when something special had happened that was going to resonate to Jets fans. And it resonates even more because of the way that he delivered it. I got to say this, guys, when I started out here on Sportsnet, it felt like a tough slog. Ken, you were working and doing stuff for TSN. You've got Sarah, Shane Knighty was here, Dennis was here, and then you've got all these radio guys from TSN 1290, and then TSN 1290 has, you know, the Freep guys on, and so it just felt like everybody was Team TSN, right? And I totally understand that, and I totally get it. You know, I didn't even have a full-time camera guy at the time, so it felt like you against 38 people. You know what I mean? And then I looked at Dennis. I talked to Dennis a couple times, and then you find out that his background is not only that, you know, he calls games and he's a broadcaster, but that, like, the guy was like running junior teams, you know, WHL teams, sending guys onto NHL careers. Guys are rolling into town and giving Dennis a head nod because he drafted them and brought them up and turned them into NHL players. And I was like, how do you compete with this? And then it's one of those things where you sit back after a couple of years of experience and you realize nobody competes with this. Dennis is one of a kind. He's phenomenal, and through it all is just an absolute great human being who you feel supported by. I reserve this. I reserve this compliment for, you know, the very best, not just guys in the business, but people in the business. And I've said this about Ron McLean before. Ron, you go talk to Ron and you leave that conversation feeling about 10 feet tall and better than you felt ever. It's an amazing skill to have. Dennis is one of those guys. You talk to Dennis and you walk away from a conversation feeling good about yourself, feeling, you know, enjoying your interaction. He's a special human being. It sucks for all of us that he's leaving, and we wish him just absolutely all of the best. Anything you guys want to say before we go?
Nope. Let's show the merch and roll on.
Yes, that's it. We're gonna get
awesome.
On
well said. You want me to do the merch, or you got it?
No, I can do that. Let's bring it up here right now. Before we do go, if anyone's interested in getting some of our gear, shirts, wake up mugs, wake up water bottles, just go to www.shopsportsnet. www.shopsportsnet.store. Great stuff there. Go check it out. Someone was bragging about our how soft our t-shirts were on there again, and I would agree with them. We have them ourselves. Thanks so much, Scotty, for joining us. Last one of the season. Probably, I don't know if you can make it on Sunday as well. Did we ever get to have the Chara conversation? We got
it's Sunday now.
You got to come on Game 82 because I need to give you the platform to go back at me. I'm feeling it's going to be epic. Bring your notes. Get fired up. Bring like a little pin to stab yourself in the thigh.
No,
so
bring your accountant with the receipts. Bring your accountant with the receipts.
We got one of the best in the game, man. So we're good.
Right on, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, hey, quick one. Winnipeg Ice. It was said in the chat, but if you missed it, Winnipeg Ice wrapped up the series in 5 games with a decisive victory here this evening. The final is 8-2. 8-2. Well, no, we'll have something for game 1 of the next series, but we won't know what that is for a while. Red Deer went up 3-2 in their series with the Brandon Wheat Kings with a 3-1 victory tonight. Game 6 will be in Brandon, I believe. I have to check the schedule on that one. I think it's Sunday, right? Sunday night.
And the Moose start May 6th against
There
Milwaukee.
you go, exactly, yeah.
That's that series is set now too.
On the road though, on May 6th.
Yeah, well, they're actually the home team, aren't they not? Because it's 2 there and 3 back here. I don't know how that works in the 5 games.
They won't be the home team because they're playing in Milwaukee.
Well,
they have home ice, but game 5 would be home. So they will be the higher seed, but the Moose will be starting on the road.
Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. It sounds like we'll have tickets to give away on Sunday for the Ice. You're going to want to go check them out. Kenny and I did game 1. You want to get there. I'm going to leave it as these two guffaw in my ear. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We will see you on Sunday for the final post-game Winnipeg Jets, Kenny and Renny, of the season.